Good evening, everyone. I'll let a few more people come in. It's great to see such a big crowd. I'm Jo Yarrington. I'm the faculty facilitator for Fairfield University's two-year water thing. Last year we learned about water shortages, the effects of excess water, and other compelling reasons why we should all be concerned about water. This year we are continuing to expand our knowledge so that we can act as responsible stewards of the earth. For that reason, the Water Theme Committee worked with our student organization, the Environmental Studies Program, and the Aquarian Water Company to provide all freshmen with a sustainable water bottle. As a token of our appreciation to our speakers, we have given them the water bottles on the table. Tonight, our panelists will discuss the ongoing process of developing a Connecticut water plan and how it will affect us all. I want to thank John Herlihy and George Logan of the Aquarian Water Company for all their help in putting together an excellent group of panelists to share their different perspectives on the process of developing the water plan. I also thank our panelists for taking the time to travel to Fairfield to share their knowledge with us. It is now my honor to introduce the Provost of Fairfield University, Dr. Lynn Babington.
Thank you, Jo. We have standing room only here, so there are some seats over here. Maybe we can direct people to. But on behalf of President Jeffrey Von Arx, I would like to welcome you this evening to Fairfield University for a discussion on how a water plan will change Connecticut's future. We are very fortunate to have such a distinguished panel and audience to field some questions for the panel. For the past 2 years, Fairfield University has been focused on water as a theme for the university. Students, faculty, and staff have developed programming in and outside of the classroom. Courses, lectures, film series, artistic performances, service experiences, all highlighting the importance of water and to investigate some of today's water challenges. We all know water is important to human life. We need water to live. As a matter of fact, our bodies are primarily made up of water. 70% of the human brain is made up of water. Water is such an important focus that Pope Francis, in his recent encyclical, focuses on water and reminds us of our responsibilities regarding ecology, pollution, and sustainability with regard to the quality of human life. Tonight, we have with us members of the community committed to addressing water concerns in Connecticut. Their work bridges the gap between the water supply planning process and water resource management to ensure that water be appropriately allocated to balance needs while protecting health, safety, and the welfare of the people of Connecticut. We welcome the expertise from our panel members as we discuss effective strategies to implement a state water plan. It's now my pleasure to welcome to the podium the Town of Fairfield's Conservation Director, Mr. Brian Carey.
Thank you, everyone, for giving me this opportunity to attend this meeting tonight. I really appreciate it. It's an honor. I was asked to come here on Friday, and in doing so, I was just reviewing the background. I think this is a very important topic, not just for the town and the university, but really for the state. If we all look a little bit at what's going on, not only in California, but over the entire West Coast, we can see that planning for our future use of water is really imperative to the growth of the state, not only economically, but also in the vitality of preserving the environment. Unfortunately, when we're dealing with a broad-based water plan like this that is required under Public Act 14163, that was the General Assembly passed in 2014, it's a zero-sum game, meaning that's an incredibly hard task because as we make adjustments to the plan going forward, there's always going to be some winners and some losers. And to do anything in that planning process makes it very, very difficult because negotiations are, when someone has to lose and someone has to win, it makes it very difficult to plan in that type of environment. That being said, I want to really thank everyone on the panel for coming tonight. I know it's a very distinguished panel, and I know everyone's time is very valuable. So thank you very much for that. And again, thank you for having me here tonight. I appreciate the honor of just giving a couple opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Before we move into the panel, I would like to remind students to please sign the sheet on the clipboard that's going around the room so we have a record of who's attended. As I mentioned before, George Logan has helped us tremendously with this panel presentation, especially because he is our moderator this evening. I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Logan, Director of Environmental Management and Government Relations for the Aquarian Water Company, to take charge of the program. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Joe. It's my pleasure to be here to cover such an important topic. I'd like to welcome all my friends and colleagues and the Fairfield University community. With us today, we have a very distinguished panel of water professionals and water advocates here. Some of the best and brightest in the state when it comes to water issues, all assembled here. So this is definitely a treat and a privilege. The state has been working on putting together a water plan, and there's lots of questions and out there in terms of what the charge is and what this plan is supposed to do. So hopefully we'll be able to answer some of those questions. Today's event, water panel, hopefully you'll find it relevant, educational, and also entertaining. We should have some fun while we're doing this. Water is one of the most important natural resources in Connecticut. As a state, we all recognize that we need a proactive approach towards conserving and enhancing natural resources, especially water. The efficient resource use and protection of the environment are all vital for sustainability of the communities where we live and work and play. It is important that we strive to act as responsible stewards of the environment and are committed to continuous improvement. Protection of the environment is the collective responsibility of government, business, individuals, and communities. We all need to be committed to implementing effective and efficient policies and practices, and to working in partnership with all stakeholders to pursue this goal of protecting the environment. Water and other related environmental concerns need to be an integral part of our planning and decision-making process. I think we can all agree that we need to sustainably manage lands and our natural resources, including water, to protect and enhance water quality in all of Connecticut's diverse ecosystem. So an overview. What we're going to cover today, we went through the welcome remarks already. I'm going to go over some introductions to the water panel. I'm going to ask questions of the panel. And then in the end, last portion, audience members will be able to ask questions as well. And then we'll do a wrap up. And just to further set up the discussion, I'm going to chat a little bit here. So water, very critical. Shaped Connecticut's landscape over time. Water must be shared. We have to share the water. We have to share the natural resource. And we must protect our water resources. Within Connecticut's borders, just some facts here, 450,000 acres of wetlands, 6,000 miles of streams and rivers, 2,000 lakes and reservoirs, 600 square miles of estuarine water in Long Island Sound. A lot to protect and share and conserve. So now we're going to get into our discussion on the state water plan. The water plan. There's a water planning council. They require a report annually to the General Assembly. In 2002, there was a report and noted that a water allocation plan was needed. Way back in 2002. The state legislature must establish clear water resource management policy. So this issue is not new, but progress has been slow. The challenge, the need for a comprehensive statewide water plan. In 2014, State Representative John Hampton happens to be here with us today. Set up a summit, a water summit, where government officials and professionals from all over the state descended upon the legislative office building up at the Capitol. I participated in some of those sessions to come up with a House Bill 5424, an act concerning a state water plan. Governor Malloy, that went through the legislature, was approved, and Governor Malloy approved it in July of 2014. And there's a report, a water plan, due to the General Assembly in January of 2018. So we've been at it for about a year. But there's still a lot to do. So, really quickly, lighten up a little bit. Water. Why water? Why are we looking at water? You look at the cartoon here. The kid's in his bed with his mother. Says, "Mommy, I'm thirsty." She goes to the kitchen and brings back a glass of water. He says, "What? Just water?" Just water, but it's very, very important. All right, now I'm going to go through quickly biographies of our panelists here. We have Mr. Jack Bukowski. Raise your hand there, Jack. He is the Vice Chairman of Connecticut's Public Utility Regulatory Authority, also known as PURA. Vice Chairman Bukowski has served on Connecticut Utilities Regulatory Authority since 1997, back when it was named the Department of Public Utility Control. He was elected Vice Chair of the body in 2007. He also served as President of the New England Conference of Public Utility Commissions and is on the Executive Committee of the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners. In addition to his the acronyms of NECPUC and NERUC responsibilities, Vice Chair Bukowski is Chair of the Water Planning Council. So we have the Chairman of the Water Planning Council right here among us. He is also a member of the American Water Research Foundation's Public Council on Drinking Water Research. He's also a member of the Environmental Protection Agency's National Drinking Water Advisory Council, serving on its Water Security Working Group. He is a graduate of Sacred Heart University and Southern Connecticut University. We also have with us State Representative John Hampton. Raise your hand there. Thank you. Rep. Hampton was elected to the Connecticut General Assembly in November 2012, representing the 16th Assembly District, Simsbury. He serves on the Aging Committee, the Banking Committee, the Planning and Development Committee, and as Vice Chair of the Committee on Children, he also serves as an Assistant Majority Leader. Prior to his election to the state legislature, Mr. Hampton served on the Simsbury Board of Selectmen from 2003 through 2012, including 5 years as Deputy First Selectman. During his tenure, he was a strong advocate for transparency in government, environmental stewardship, and support programs for senior citizens and veterans. Highlights of State Representative Hampton's accomplishments include creating the Clean Energy Task Force, starting the Simsbury Volunteer Expo, partnering on the Martin Luther King in Simsbury documentary and celebration, initiating the town of Simsbury's annual holiday collection for Veterans Home in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. A lifelong town resident, he is active in the Terraville Village Association and Farmington River Watershed Association and the Simsbury Main Street Partnership. He is a graduate of the University of Hartford. Also, we have Ms. Lori Matthew at the end of the table there. Ms. Matthew is the Public Health Section Chief of Connecticut's Department of Public Health Drinking Water Section under the branch of Regulatory Services. Ms. Matthew is responsible for primacy of the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act and state statutes that oversee the purity and adequacy of Connecticut's approximately 2,550 public water systems. There's a lot of water systems. For over 25 years, Ms. Matthew has worked within public water system planning, including individual, regional, and statewide water supply planning and policy, as well as source, water protection, and water company land and source approval. As Section Chief, Ms. Matthew administers the laws that regulate the state's public drinking water systems through system survey, system engineering review, enforcement, information management, including water quality review, certification of system operators, source protection, planning, emergency response, and provisions of technical assistance. She's a graduate of the University of Connecticut. We also have with us Ms. Margaret Miner. Raise your hand, Margaret. Thank you. Ms. Miner is the Executive Director of Rivers Alliance of Connecticut, a statewide nonprofit organization formed in 1992 to protect Connecticut's rivers and streams by promoting sound river conservation policies and by assisting the many groups and individuals involved in watershed protection. She serves in several statewide capacities, including co-chair of the Water Planning Council Advisory Group. Prior to coming to Rivers Alliance, she was executive director of the award-winning Roxbury Land Trust, and before that, she was a local newspaper reporter specializing in politics, land use, and the environment. If you look at the advertisement we have on there Mr. Mike Sullivan. Due to a late schedule conflict, Mike Sullivan, the Deputy Commissioner for Department of Environmental Quality at Connecticut's Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, has been replaced with the equally as knowledgeable and educated and appropriate Denise Ruzicka. Denise is the Director of Water Planning and Standards Division at Connecticut's Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. Ms. Ruzicka is responsible for oversight and funding of municipal wastewater treatment plants and water quality assessment standards and protection programs. She is a licensed professional engineer in Connecticut and has approximately 30 years of experience in water resources management and public water system planning. Ms. Ruzicka serves as chair of the State Board of Examiners of Environmental Professionals, the LEP Board, and serves as the governor's appointee to the Interstate Connecticut River Valley and Thames River Valley Flood Control Commission. She's a graduate of Dartmouth College. Also with us is Ms. Maureen Westbrook. Maureen is the Vice President of Customer and Regulatory Affairs at Connecticut Water Company. Having been with the company for 27 years, Ms. Westbrook is responsible for all of the company's customer service programs, customer communications, public information, and permitting and regulatory compliance, as well as coordination of legislative and regulatory programs. She focuses on development strategies for legislation and regulatory programs that balance the interests of the company and its customers with other stakeholders to protect water supplies and promote environmental stewardship. Ms. Westbrook has been an active member and held leadership positions on Connecticut Waterworks Association, Connecticut's section of American Waterworks. She serves as co-chair of the state's Water Planning Council Advisory Group and is a member of the steering committee and policy subcommittees for the state water plan. She's a graduate of Smith College and also Pennsylvania State University. So as you see, we have a very, very knowledgeable, educated, and experienced group of panelists. And now we're going to get into the questions. The format here, we're trying to make this sort of relevant today. You know, we've got the number of presidential debates going on, and you have the panelists and the moderator. I'm the moderator, but I'm not going to be one of those harsh moderators. We're going to be a friendly moderator. We're still going to ask the tough questions. The ones I don't ask, you guys can ask. I'm going to pose a question to one panelist, but I'm encouraging all the panelists to chime in on as they see fit on each question. So, first question goes to Rep. Hampton. My question for you, Rep. Hampton, is what was the impetus that encouraged you to get involved with this issue and to organize the General Assembly Water Summit way back in the spring of 2014?
Well, first of all my emails will be available, transparent, to share with all of you. It's so great to be here at Fairfield University. I want to thank Fairfield for hosting an Aquarian and to be amongst friends, some really distinguished panelists. And I dug in my closet and tried to find the closest red to Fairfield red. But I went to University of Hartford, which is a little more burgundy. I don't know, I think I failed. But it's great to be here, and it's great to see so many students interested in this really exciting topic. I chose water planning because I thought it was going to be really easy, right out of the box. I'm a freshman legislator, but I was so excited to be elected in 2012, and your legislators who have more seniority, when you get there, they tell you to find really a specialty because you really get overwhelmed with a lot of different issues. They tell you to find like a signature issue. Well, one just fell into my lap when I discovered that the University of Connecticut was going to divert water from the Farmington River, where I live along the Farmington River, and I thought, wow, that doesn't really sound like a smart idea and environmentally sound and fiscally sound. And let me talk to my friends in the legislature, Mary Mashinsky and others. I said, well, what does the statewide water plan say? And we don't have one. So that became my signature issue, and just a naive freshman started to go about asking all the questions and all the right people and experts in the room for advice on how to create a statewide water plan. I want to acknowledge in the room today Representative Steinberg, Jonathan Steinberg, who's from Westport. The number of your district is 136. He's a good friend, a mentor of mine, and he's a elder statesman who gave me great advice and was intricately and intrinsically involved in the statewide water plan and developing the concept. But for starters, I wanted to bring all the stakeholders together, all the key people that might be involved in water planning. And we just loaded the room with everybody from academia, environmental groups, public utilities, agriculture, business. We called a water summit to get everybody around the room to ask the questions about why we don't have a plan, what needs to be done to create a plan, what are the challenges and opportunities. And the Water Summit was extremely successful. Again, with credit to these folks to my right and to the left, bringing all their wealth of talent and expertise about how we can plan for our most basic commodity, our water. And I was stunned that we make plans for transportation, for our healthcare and our schools and everything else, but we didn't have a plan for our most fundamental resource. And you don't have to look too far to other states who have some serious drought issues, and other countries that are in grave crisis in terms of their water. So we had the summit, and out of that summit came the basics of a piece of legislation, which was referred to earlier. And of course, coming from the Board of Selectmen, it's 6 people. Do you think it's all so simple? You just have to go to the other 5 people and you get it done in about a month or 2. But I was a little titmouse freshman, and I forgot that there's 150 other reps, and 36 senators and a governor. It was a great learning experience because about learning how a bill becomes a law, how to start the whole process and all the committees it goes through. Committees of cognizance from environment to public health, it was just a roller coaster ride that ended really 10 to midnight on the end of session, where we got it through the Senate. It was dramatic, it was exciting, but again, I just felt like a little spark that helped, a cog in a wheel that really just brought the right people together. Again, these great people next to me who have years and years of experience and a wealth of knowledge, and the rest is history.
Super, thank you. Other panelists? I know I was in the peanut gallery and some of the work groups for that water summit. And I know there were work groups were formed on supply and distribution, quality, protection, and conservation. There was an administrative and infrastructure and oversight work group. I know Sylvia at the table there participated in some of those work groups. What was your take or impression, or what you learned or surprised you about the water summit?
Well, I like to, again, kudos to Representative Hampton for getting this moving in the state legislature, because having been around the public utility control since 1997, water has always been kind of the stepchild in the regulatory world, as we know. As a matter of fact, it's so nice to see so many people in the room here this evening. I just came from a regulatory conference in Austin, Texas, and when it comes to water, you probably have maybe a quarter the size of people, because people don't think a lot about it until it's gone. And that's the real motivation for this water plan, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a moment. But Representative, was really the motivation behind this, and at all levels of government. I mean, the governor whether you like our governor or not, he got very committed to the water plan and came to the summit and spoke very enthusiastically about it, and wants us to see us deliver something to his desk in January 2018. So I think the fact that we got, and it's a bipartisan approach, and many of my distinguished colleagues on this panel were part of that whole process, but it was a good process that needed to come before the legislature, and was voted on, and now we have our work cut out for us.
Yeah.
You were there.
I was there. I could ask John, what was it about the proposed merger from Farmington River watershed over to Yukon that was problematic? The Metropolitan District Commission, the utilities said they had plenty of water, so what was the problem?
The whole notion just didn't seem like it was thought out. And guess what? Plans are thought out and strategic. It seemed reactionary, and God bless Yukon, and they're growing and need support and everything else, but it didn't, from a layperson's standpoint, seem, again, environmentally sound, because the Farmington River, as you know, can become perilously close to drought at a certain amount of time, and the costs, the laying of the actual infrastructure that was, I forget the amount of money, it was going to be astronomical to divert water from the Farmington River up to Storrs campus. It just didn't seem to make any sense environmentally and fiscally.
Yes, and to follow up the question of what interbasin transfers or transfers of water across the state has been a recurring problem, and I think was one of the things the Water Planning Council has been looking at for some time, and this was a dramatic interbasin transfer.
That it was.
And as one from the company that actually ended up being the service provider selected out there, the irony was there were other alternatives closer to the university than the one from Metropolitan District. So when you're looking not only from a cost perspective, but the amount of infrastructure, the potential to induce development in areas where it might not have been preferred, all those things considered, when there was another supply that was more than adequate to meet the needs, it became a question of how do you position that decision-making to be the right decision. And absent a plan that kind of specified what the criteria would be, it became both a political process as well as a procurement process, quite honestly, for the university. But it did draw attention to the lack of process that was already there.
Great, thank you. Vice Chair Bukowski, you're next for question number 2. So we're hearing a lot in terms of the background and technical aspects of the water plan. But what exactly is a water plan? And why should the public, many of who are here today, get excited about the development of a state water plan?
Thank you, George, and again, thank you, Fairfield University and Aquarian, for sponsoring this forum this evening, and I hope that this is the first of many forums we'll have like this throughout the state of Connecticut as we formulate this plan. And people should get excited about this because this is something we're going to chart out for the citizens of the state of Connecticut for the next 50 years. And recently, you might have seen in the paper that Aquarian actually put out a press release because they were concerned about the fact that there wasn't enough rain and there was some potential drought issues. And when you look what's going on in other parts of the country, in California and Colorado and Florida and Texas, and where there's not plentiful water supply, the fact is that we need a comprehensive water plan for the state of Connecticut, and the legislature in their wisdom saw fit to do that. So the Water Planning Council, as George indicated, was established 13 years ago because the legislature's been talking a little bit about water over the years. Let's do a plan, but it's not as sexy as electricity, as natural gas, as cable TV, and other utilities. But we got it to the forefront this year. So the council's been set up, and it's myself, and we have representatives from the Department of Public Health, Ellen Blashinsky, who's represented tonight by Lori, and we have, as already mentioned, the Deputy Commissioner of the Environmental Agency, Michael Sullivan, who's represented by Denise Rizika, and Dave Lavasser is our Vice Chair, and he's part of the Office of Policy Management. And we have met over the past decade to look at water issues, but you can't do anything without money. So to the legislature's credit, this year they authorized $500,000 to, and even with the budget, it's still there, that we can use to, and hopefully it's going to represent Hampton, hopefully going to protect it for us when you go up to Hartford, that this is money that's going to be used for us to formulate the plan. And it's critical to the whole process, as is the stakeholders to the process. We have many people here this evening on this panel that are very much involved. We have our Water Planning Council Advisory Group, which Margaret and Maureen co-chair, and this is made up of stakeholders from various people in the water industry, from people that agriculture to golf courses to industry. We need water for our industry in the state of Connecticut, for heat, gas-powered, water-cooled plants. So water just, not only did we ingest it, we need it for the economy, we need it for recreation, and we need it for environmental purposes as well. So we also have set up a steering committee that works with the water plan. So we have the Water Planning Council Advisory Group, the steering committee, and then we're going to make the recommendations to the Water Planning Council how we're going to proceed We have a science and technology and a policy committee as well to look at issues. You know, when you think about water, it's just water. There's just so much that goes into it. Even though we do have a plentiful supply, but it's just in terms of diversion and you know, how we quantify it and how we keep the quality of the water supply, which Lori does on a daily basis. You know, we do have situations sometimes where the water is not potable and where people can't drink it, and then we have to truck water and that kind of thing. So I'm very, very excited about this plan, and I'm optimistic we're going to meet our deadlines, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Other panelists, would you like to chime in terms of what excites you about the water plan?
Well, I guess I would like to say that from the Department of Public Health's perspective, we are excited because finally water is being highlighted. You know, for us in the public health arena, it's very important to have high quality drinking water for people to consume. As Jack has mentioned previously, that this is not just any old utility. It's not cell phones, it's not cable, it's water. Everyone consumes water. We're drinking the water here today, and it better be good. And we better not go home today and get sick. Our assumption is in the state of Connecticut that you can go anywhere in the state, whether you go to my town and go to the 7-Eleven and get a big gulp, right? And it's made with water that has a well out behind that building, that well is protected, because there's quite a few of those types of systems in the state of Connecticut. There's over 2,000 of those that has to test their water. But there's also many, many large systems like that serve here in Fairfield, the Aquarian water systems or Connecticut water systems or MDC or Regional Water Authority. It could go on and name quite a few. There's a number in the towns that people live in here. Every one of those has to meet standards. Every one of those our department is responsible to pay attention to. And so there's federal standards, there's state laws, public health laws that have protected our drinking water supplies for many years. The picture up on the screen, I forget which reservoir that is that Easton? Easton Reservoir. So in other states, you might not see a reservoir so beautiful that's protected by the land around it. You might see people jet skiing, water skiing, other things in other states are allowed, but not in Connecticut. Laws have been around for many years that have protected our drinking water supplies, and it's to the credit of the legislators here and the legislators that came before them to protect those sources for public consumption. So we think, in the health department anyway, that water never gets the credit or the attention it deserves. And so we're very happy to be part of this effort and bring forward the issues. We're so happy to be here tonight and glad to be invited here to Fairfield, beautiful campus, Fairfield University. I was here 30 years ago, but it's changed a lot and it's beautiful still. But you flourish, your universities, your schools, you flourish because you have good potable drinking water, because you have the public's trust. And so from the legislators to the people like myself that carry out the laws and oversee people like Maureen and their companies and John Hurley and Aquarian Water, everybody has a part to play. Pura has a part to play, DEEP has a part to play, OPM has a part to play in the oversight of drinking water. And I'm just excited that finally we're going to get the attention that we deserve. So thank you, John, and thank you, Representative, for bringing this forward and bringing the attention forward. We greatly appreciate that.
George, one thing I should have mentioned in my opening remarks is the fact that when the Water Planning Council was established, the historically public health, environmental protection, office of policy management, and RH didn't talk to each other. I mean, and everybody had a little bit to do with water. You had some doing quality, some doing quantity, some looking at the financial aspect. But one thing that legislation did, even though it was 13 years ago, at least finally got us all in the same room, and even though at the beginning we had some arguments, right? Yeah, a little here or there. But the fact is, it got us into one room to work on the various issues together and set up an agenda, even though it took us a long time to finally get the legislative teeth to do something effectively.
if I could point out one other thing is, we don't have a crisis right now in terms of water in the state of Connecticut. Many other states, their plans were driven by crisis. And we always know when we have too much water and we don't have enough water. So it's a great opportunity for us to set up the plan and those policies when we're not being driven by a crisis. And I think that's a unique opportunity.
Great, thank you. The next question actually is directed to you, Ms. Matthew. Way back, prior to 2002, back in the 80s, when I was in high school, in 1985, and you were, back in 1985, there was a public act, 85-535. So I did a little research to see what was that all about. And it was an act concerning a Connecticut plan for public water supply coordination back in 1985, prior to 2002. That was passed by the Connecticut General Assembly. It's better known today as the WUC process, Water Utility Coordinating Committee. Since we have an active WUC process, which I believe is active, I know is active right now, why, folks are going to want to know, why do we need to go through all this effort to develop a state water plan now? What is the difference between the two efforts?
Well, thank you for the question, George. And like so many in the presidential debates, I won't answer your question specifically. I will. What did I really want to say? So, well, the WUC process, yes. So there's a lot of confusion out there between the Water Utility Coordinating Committee process, known as WUC, and the State Water Plan. They are a State Water Plan and the Public Act that John and the state representatives created and signed by the governor, 14-163. And all of you out there, your students that are here, thank you for being here. Go Google this. You probably could look this up now, but probably don't use your cell phones, but Public Act 14-163. It's a fairly simple act. There's a lot of details about what the state water plan should be all about, but that really will give you what the focus is. That law was passed in the year 2014. It's about water resources statewide and use of water statewide. That includes one use of water is water supply and public consumption. But that's not the only use. So the WUC plan is a water supply plan, a coordinated water supply plan among the public water systems that supply water in the state. Again, there's 2,500. We're a small state, but we have 2,552 public water systems. It's a ridiculous number to have in a very small state. And there's something wrong with state policy because there really is something wrong. When a small little town just will continue to grow non-community systems, one after another, where there's arsenic and uranium in the water, or there's contamination in the water, and there's proposed businesses in areas that have plumes of contamination in the ground, and they can't develop, and they can't get a permit from Denise, or they can't get a permit from me in the health department, and developers want to do things, towns want to do things, but they can't get their permits because there's no water to this area. We're a small state. We should be able to figure this out. And working together, that's what the WUC plan was all about. It was the water systems coming together with the Council of Governments, Regional Council of Governments, working on a coordinated water supply plan. And again, it's just a plan. It's not giving permits and permission to move forward. It's a plan. And yes, in 1985, when I was still in college, not in high school, but I was still in college, up at UConn. Actually, when this law passed, this was the reason I was hired at the health department, to work on the WUC process and water supply planning reviews that are done by our larger systems. So there's a big difference between the two. There's a state water plan, which is to look at all uses of water across the state, waste load, agriculture, recreational use, You can go on and on, irrigation, look at different policies, you know, why we don't use the purple pipe. Who has heard of the purple pipe? Anyone heard of purple pipe? Who knows what that means, right? Just a few people. It's water reuse. And I'm not saying reuse for drinking water purposes, but reuse water for other purposes that are appropriate. And UConn has a good example that they've built up on their campus for water reuse. We should be doing more of that. We should be investing more in that. We should be using water wisely. The health department will always say, and from our commissioner, Dr. Drew Mullen, would say the highest quality sources should go for human consumption. Because treatment technologies, you've got a professor of engineering, the dean of the School of Engineering, treatment can't solve everything. Treatment is not the end-all be-all. You have to have good, clean source water to begin with. And then you can treat it as well. Because the challenges are not ending when it comes to public health and drinking water. There's emerging contaminants, there's pharmaceuticals, there's all sorts of things. There's all kinds of new bacteria out there. Legionella, who's heard of Legionella? Right? New York City, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Nevada, people dying from Legionella in drinking water. So there are still challenges in the public health arena when it comes to drinking water supplies, and there has to be a critical eye on public water supply across the state. We have to look at policies and changing policies on how we can have a more coordinated effort across the state and have our utilities working together with their towns and their town governments and their state representatives so everyone can understand where water is coming and going, and who's going to supply UConn, or who's going to supply the next area that needs it, or that next business that will bring in 500 jobs. You know, it's a shame. We've lost businesses because water supply wasn't in the area that we needed it to be. And so we need to coordinate better at the state level, and that's what the WUC plan is all about. There's an effort with the health department to move it forward. The health department's been responsible for 30 years to get it done, and what part of my job as a manager of our section is to move that forward, and we're doing that over the next couple of years. So, but we're not the state water plan. We're not working on every use of water. We're working on water supply.
But you would say it's clearly an important piece of the state
It
water
is
plan.
one of many pieces
Right.
of the state water plan. I see Margaret reaching for her microphone, so
Absolutely.
can we, well, anyway.
Great. Yes, we agree on many things, 90% of the issues before us, and I certainly agree with Laurie and the Department of Public Health on their standards for water, and that there's no reason for people in Connecticut not to have water where it is needed. It can be done. We've faced some stresses presently with changes in precipitation, but the Water Utility Coordinating Committee plan was, if you read the statute, a very confusing and flawed statute to begin with, I believe, and which is probably the reason why only one of originally there were 7 Water Utility Coordinating Committee areas, only one, and that was fairly recently, went through and got a plan. I think 3 were never called at all. And one of the problems is if you have 2,000 water systems and every water system is a member of WUC, how do you get those people together in the same room and decide anything, or do you just not have some in? So 30 years later, times have changed. We have a new approach to water planning. I think that the WUC plan is really outdated. It addresses only a part of the system supply, and yet because back in 1985 people were thinking about the environment, there's requirements thrown in, well, you have to look at other environmental resources. This is an enormous task that was undoable for 30 years. I don't think it's doable now under the statute. And a little bit of stress came up. We're trying to get money for water planning, and the first $250,000 went to WUC planning. Wait a minute, we want a part of that for our fish. So we agree on, I think Laurie and I agree on all goals, but we don't exactly agree how to get there. John mentioned Mary Mashinsky. She came to a WUC meeting down in Middletown and stood up and requested that the WUC planning be integrated with the state water planning, which is our position. I'm making a pitch for it right now. Thank you.
So if I could counter.
Absolutely.
I'll be the middle.
Right. So, as Margaret said, Margaret and I agree, I would say with 99% of the things. This is the entertaining part.
That's why I'm here.
Otherwise, it'd be totally boring, right? Margaret, I'm surprised you didn't bring up FOI.
Don't
encourage it.
encourage her.
You wanted entertaining, right?
It's on my agenda.
Okay, I'm sure it's there, so
I do have some samples of pages that are mostly black from redaction, so
Well-
you'll enjoy it. It's a visual.
The one thing about, and the reason why I bring up FOI, we all have seen what happened in Paris. I have a friend, actually a teammate of mine from Yukon, who lives in Paris and lives in one of the neighborhoods that was the restaurant, was one of the restaurants was near. And so we were, a group of us, our Facebook friends, and we were going back and forth, make sure she was okay, first of all, and she said she was okay. Her two boys are over here in the States going to school, and so she was safe, but she's scared to death. She's scared to death. And I was listening to the news, CNN, this lunchtime, and now ISIS is talking about Washington, and coming to Washington and going to attack the United States. So the reason why I bring that up, the FOI law was created right after 9/11. Many of you can remember 9/11. It was a horrific time for us at the health department and many state agencies where before 9/11 we were open, we wanted to share information, the internet and our internet capacities were just up and coming as a state agency, and we wanted to get as much information online as we could because that's the way we were. We're a free country. We wanted to share information freely. But I remember coming to work the day after 9/11 saying, oh my God, we have got to shut down every reservoir, every well, every because everybody was scared. I remember how I felt the day after coming to work. And that law passed, and that law protects sensitive drinking water supply information, which the state agencies hold. And it's not just the health department. There's many agencies represented at this table, receive information that needs to be held secure under that particular law. Now, as Margaret mentioned also, many years have gone by, and that law now probably needs to be reviewed and looked at again because cybersecurity is becoming more and more of a concern. It's something that PURA has taken a lead on. Our agency is involved in that as well with EPA. We're very concerned about cybersecurity for our water utilities. So the threats don't end. They are not stopping. They are still out there. They are still relevant. There are people that want to do harm to many parts of many sectors, and water supply is one of them. So we have to take that very seriously, and we do at the health department. Maybe we've been conservative with the redactions, but you know what? I've told my staff we're not letting anything out under that statute that would do harm to public drinking water supply, and we're going to follow the statute to the best of our ability, that the legislator gave us a statute to execute, and we're going to do that. So if anyone comes to me and talks about FOI, I take it, as you can tell with my tone, I take it very seriously. So if we want to have a discussion about the statute, I think we should. But you got to know, as you've seen over the weekend, there still are threats out there that are quite scary and things that need to be addressed and discussed so that we are all, as public agencies, when we get an FOI request, we are all consistently doing and following the statute as executing the statute that we were given to execute on a very consistent manner.
And if I can just jump in back on the question and where that fits in relative to the state plan. As we've done this, we've talked about it in different forums and things, and some people call it the state water plan, some people call it the state water resources plan, some call it the state water supply plan. very subtle but important differences, and the statute called it a state water plan. And I think it's because it is supposed to be so broad and encompassing with all aspects of water use, not just drinking water and public water supply purposes. So I think, but one of the key things in there is to identify the present and projected demands for water resources on the state and a regional basis. That's out of the statute. So I think, from our perspective, the only way you can really start to have those conversations is to have the information on public water supply, current and projected uses as a piece of that. We don't begin to think that that will supplant the broader question or the broader need to look at that in the context of all the other uses. But in my mind, it's an important data point to at least have that on the table as you start looking at the other things. So it's just like any other plan that is being considered in the process. And the timing is ironic, I'm sure, Margaret, from your perspective, but I don't want to tell you, I was in 1985 working on those plans at the health department. So, but I think it's been delayed, but it's an important piece of this. And as we take seriously the broader view of the state's water resources, that's got to be a component of it.
Super, thank you, Maureen. And so as you can see, as the discussion develops here, now you can start to hopefully get a feel for how developing a state water plan can get complicated really quickly. We're doing well with time. I just want to mention some regarding the Public Act. So the scope of that act is to charge the Water Planning Council and the Steering Committee is charged with identifying the quantities and qualities of water available. Maureen mentioned the projections, present and projected demands for water going into the future. Recommend the utilization of the state's water resources. So this water plan is one of the, we're trying to make a recommendation, right, for the utilization of the state's water resources, including surface and subsurface water, in a manner that balances public water supply, economic development, recreation, and ecological health. Recommend steps to increase the climate resiliency of existing water resources and infrastructure. Make recommendations for technology and infrastructure upgrades, interconnections, and such major engineering works or special districts which may be necessary, including the need, timing, and general cost thereof. Recommend land use and other measures, including an assessment of land acquisition or land protection needs, where appropriate. Take into account desired ecological, recreational, agricultural, industrial, and commercial use of water bodies. Inform residents of the state about the importance of water resource stewardship and conservation. And there's a number of others. We just want to give you a flavor or a feel. I'm sure most of you are going to go out and probably go online and you can read all this yourself. But this is what we're talking about. And so given that, what we've done is we need to all work together, that being the water professionals that are working on our behalf with the state of Connecticut, businesses in the state, but also there's a piece of water advocates that are out there, non-profit groups, groups such as the Rivers Alliance, which Ms. Margaret Miner is the executive director of. So given that, I'm going to point my next question over to you, Ms. Miner. In addition to look and perhaps want to elaborate on the Freedom of Information Act, but Ms. Miner, what are some of the other concerns of the nonprofit environmental community regarding the process for developing the state water plan?
First of all, let me say thank you, George, and thank you to Fairfield University, particularly for not having water in bottles, because when pictures are taken, I constantly have to hide the water bottle behind my back. Wait, don't take that picture, just a minute. Most conferences give you water in bottles, and we advocate for high quality, beautiful Aquarian water from its beautiful reservoirs. The goal of Rivers Alliance and what River and fisher people, Audubon bird groups, we're concerned with the wildlife, the aquatic wildlife, the health of our waters, and for those creatures to thrive, you really do need high quality water. So both sides are working for high quality water. What the environmental community fish kissers, or something calls. What we're concerned with, we always feel that we come last after you do industry, water supply, everything else. Then maybe there'll be something left over for the rivers. So our concern is to be sure that when water is being allocated, it is done in a way that will preserve our water resources. I say that often the overallocation of water, it's like, okay, we don't really need to have so many fish. We don't need native fish, we can have pond fish, and that will be fine. And I say it's like miners in a coal mine with a canary, and the canary keels over, and they say, great, more air for us. It doesn't make sense. When fish, frogs, and little salamanders are starting to die, we should be taking notice. That is not a good sign for our future health and water supplies. I must thank Jack also, because he has been a bulldog on moving this water plan forward, with people like me carping and nipping at his heels, and he pays no attention. He says, we're going forward, I'll talk to you later. So, which is the right attitude. I will, I'll get off the books for a minute. So we have two goals, really. We do want a fair and sustainable allocation. And I think that's what everybody wants. But when we say fair, we're thinking about natural rivers. And when we say think sustainable, we're thinking about those rivers being there in the future. A particular goal of Rivers Alliance is, I don't want it to be legal anymore for anybody to dry up a river by pumping it, or to dry up groundwater or their neighbors' wells, either by pumping, diversion, whatever. Those problems are still prominent in Connecticut. The law is not clear. About the same time as about the same time the Water Planning Council was formed, and for some of the same reasons, there were fights over where water would go. There was the Chippewa River case. Roxbury and Washington sued Waterbury for more water for their river. There was a case in Mill River where Hamden and New Haven, or Hamden and New Haven sued the Regional Water Authority there because they planned to divert extra millions of gallons. And then bills were coming to the legislature. I remember working with Denise on some, and Denise was also a witness for DEP in the Chippewa River case. And Ken Scove here, my buddy from Waterbury Water, is now with Aquarian. So when I looked at the, I'll go down to the FOI law. When I looked at the FOI law, my first reaction at the time was, there are not going to be any more Chippewa River cases, because all the data that was developed to bring those kinds of litigation and try to get more water for particular rivers was now redacted. You couldn't get it. And our members are either individuals or watershed groups, and when they see a river running dry, they want to know why. Is it new diversions? Is the water company doing something different? Is it climate change? I appreciate the fear. I come from New York. I was very aware of, well, that was a bad day for sure. But I say, if terrorists did a quarter of harm to our water that we ourselves are continuing to do with contamination, uncleaned up pollution, I mean, they'd be in jail without parole. So I'll show you just the freedom, the redaction that went through is extraordinarily broad. It does not matter if the material you seek is already in the public domain and you're just trying to get it into one organized place. If it's mentioned under this law, you cannot get it. It refers to water company property. It's not a question of safety or whatever. If there's a potential of harm to water company property, it can be redacted. most people don't realize, even in a town meeting, and if a water company is making a presentation and there are minutes on that presentation, and the water company says where its water mains are, sorry, Jack, those minutes are supposed to be redacted and not made available to the public. So here, this is my last word. I went back to look at the regional plans, which WUCs are supposed to create. So I looked at some of the ones that were either in draft form or created. And when you get to the data, you get pages that look like this. Can you see the black probably shows up quite well? Sometimes there'll be, a number of columns, but then when you're looking for the numbers are redacted. I've seen executive summaries with redactions in them. Oh, our mission, half of it redacted. I thought, what could that mission be? Here's an important data page. Now, when you want to do water planning, you need data. And I personally think we weren't doing badly on data, but we do need data to make decisions. My colleagues all want to have data, but we say we're not scared. We put up signs that say no fear, but we are scared. And we're scared to let go and go back to where we were. And sure, the public doesn't need to know and shouldn't know the computer systems. And I have some ideas on, I hope they really are secure, but the margin of safety for your water company, a customer should be able to go look that up. So I'm very happy that Laurie has said and Deep has said that they really want to look at this law, and we cannot do water planning under these circumstances, and it seems silly. This should not be an issue before us, but unfortunately it is.
So can I jump in with a little context here? Margaret's point is that, Connecticut is defined by our rivers. And we expect the green, lush stream byways to be there. In fact, we're named after a grand river, the state is. And the standard for water quality is fishable, swimmable everywhere. What started a lot of this water controversy, I hate to use the term, was really Yukon. We go back to Yukon because they dried up a stream. There was a fish kill, and they were totally within their legal rights to do so. They didn't do anything wrong. They didn't break any laws. In 1982, there was a law passed called the Water Diversion Policy Act that basically said that anybody who had been withdrawing water from streams or reservoirs up to that point in time got to grandfather those by registering those amounts. Yukon was within its registered amounts. It's since done a great job. So I don't want to totally dump there because they've really done a great job in terms of management, resolving that issue, green infrastructure, conservation, and moving some wells further away from the stream so that it doesn't have the same impact. At that same time, that law said that any withdrawal of water of more than 50,000 gallons a day in any given day from any water body in the state of Connecticut would be permitted, so it has an environmental review. And I think it's just, I bring that up to say the layering of all of the different types of plans, all the different kinds of policies that are out there, all of which has served the state well. The question is, how do we integrate them so that they work better together? And as what I would say there. On the wastewater side, actually the legislature in 2013 passed a law called Sewerage Right to Know. And we're working on creating some websites that should be up and running within the next year, which tell you not only where every wastewater treatment plant is and where any combined sewer overflows are, which are in our older cities where we have both stormwater and wastewater commingled, and under high rainfall events, it spills into our rivers, where those locations are reported, and we'll have near real-time reporting of any bypass into rivers, because you want to know if you're going out the next day with your kids or your dog, whether or not there was a sewage spill into that water body, and it seems to make sense to have it electronically available, and hopefully one of you will then take it and make an app or something and make it really cool. That would be kind of neat.
Great. Thank you. So my next question, actually, is going to go to you, Ms. Muzika. You alluded to diversions. We're diverting water from natural water courses, whether it be a pond, a lake, a river, diverted for some other use, there are classifications for water. A couple of them that are important to our discussion is the inland surface water classification, class AA. There's designated uses for class AA, surface water. Is designated uses, existing or proposed drinking water supply, right? So drinking water supply, those waters are generally, surface water generally class AA. Fish and wildlife habitat, some recreational use, although it may be restricted, agricultural and industrial supply. Then there's class B water. Designated uses, recreational use, fish and wildlife habitat, agriculture, industrial, and other legitimate uses, including navigation, discharges, restricted to some degree. The question is, why or what is the value of protecting existing inland surface water class AA status? And should the state consider opening up class B waters for potable water use? Class B waters would be Housatonic River is an example of class B water. Connecticut River is an example of class B water. Industry pulls from the river, but they also can dump into the river. Sewage treated water or sewage treatment plants can be dumped into class B water. There's been some talk about utilizing class B water for potable water use, treating it and using it. In other states, that is the case. There are many states that is a normal occurrence, but we don't do that here in Connecticut. So again, I pose a question.
So in fact, there are only 2 states that prohibit the use of waste receiving streams. So when you think about Class B waters, it's waste receiving streams from being used for potable drinking water. And I think that standard of protection has actually served the state rather well. And these standards, there's only 2 classes, A and B. And B is fishable, swimmable standard. So is pursuant to the water quality standards that are adopted by regulation by the state, and that's pursuant to the Federal Clean Water Act, that every state has to classify its water bodies and then manage to the water quality standard that is adopted therein. We're a relatively water-rich state in comparison when you think of the western states, and there should be enough water to meet all our needs if we're wise about it, if we use the right match up the right quality to the need. For instance, if you're irrigating a golf course, if you're in most other states, they're using reclaimed water, and they are not using our most pristine water of drinking water for that, and that seems to make perfect sense. And then there are other uses. You want to make sure you have the most pristine water being used. Let's say it was a food processing plant. You know, and that makes sense. And I think it's served us really well. It's also protected our headwater streams, which also results in better water quality downstream. It provides for great land protection, which provides habitat for wildlife as well. And it's not just drinking water reservoirs that are very well protected. There's flood control facilities, both federal and state, deep wildlife management areas and forestry lands, and the state's been well served by that. And I think throwing that on its, on its head makes no sense to me. But being wiser about our water use, recycling water more, using recycled water for appropriate uses, and cleaning up the areas of pollution where they are in our streams is where we really need to be going.
Great, thank you, Ms. Rosita. Any comments from panelists?
So, go ahead.
Okay, I support, our board voted to support maintaining, some years ago, maintaining the Class A standard. We had 2 physicians on the board at that time. What is in our waters is more and more complicated, toxins that nobody even tests for. So it is a good standard. However, it does come at a price. Rhode Island has a similar standard, but they have a much simpler water system. The price is, when new water is sought, it's coming out of, the place to go is our Class A streams, our best upland streams, our best upland aquifers. And unless, I don't see headwaters actually being protected as headwaters for streams. So it's a standard that we support. We think it's good for health, but other states have not been able to hold to that standard. I think we can but we should not just keep turning for more and more water to our upland coal streams and our upland headwaters.
Oh, and I agree, this is where, a lot of times that, I'm asked a lot as the health department employee, why don't you guys get along with your counterparts in DEP? Right? Why is there always, I said, well, I get along with Denise,
Yeah, I
right?
hired you.
Yeah, she hired me. Thank you for that.
They used to work together at the same agency.
Yes, we did. Denise hired me. Even though I had bad grades, you still wanted me. It's good. So I'm pleased to hear Denise say that. I'm pleased to hear Margaret express that. I have the opportunity to go around the country and represent Connecticut as the part of the ASDWA, the State Association of Drinking Water Administrators. As a matter of fact, I represent New England right now, presently on their board. And we were at a meeting in Texas, and we heard a lot from my counterpart, my colleague, who has my position in California. And they are going through absolute hell. Yes, you said it. She is going through hell. They've changed the whole regulatory scheme in California. They have radical laws where they can just go in and take over systems, and all these things are just things that I just couldn't believe. And we're out to dinner, and she's just listing them one after another that are ongoing because of the disaster that they are. She said the northern part of California never planned for what they're going through, ever. The southern part did better planning. They're still going through a lot of issues, but she said the northern part of California never planned for this. Texas, Oklahoma, now they're getting a lot of rain, a lot of rain. But in Connecticut, we've done good planning. Our water utilities, the people that represent Aquarian and Connecticut Water in this room have produced individual water supply plans for the past 25 years to make sure for a 50-year period projections are being met for population demands and for demands by communities and the regions that they serve or that they will serve in the future. We've done good planning here, and I think we're ahead of the game. As Denise mentioned, Class B prohibition has served us well in the past and will continue to serve us well. I think the state water plan should take advantage of that and think about exactly what Margaret put on the table to say, how can we do both? I think we're smart enough to figure that out. So how do we do both? How do we protect fisheries, aquatic environments, vernal pools, all these other things that are out there that are great for the environment, but also how do we protect public health and our drinking water supplies at the same time? And I will say, when I've seen a number of the utilities' reservoirs and the land that they own around those reservoirs, if you had a chance ever to go hiking in beautiful areas around these reservoirs, the reservoir that's on that picture, and the reservoirs around New Haven and Connecticut Water Company's reservoirs, who own big pieces of land, MDC's reservoir, they're wonderful pieces of property, and they have done an excellent job at protecting the environment since those laws were in place in the 70s. I think we've done an excellent job. We should congratulate ourselves with all of the laws we have in place and how great we've protected people's health, the environment, and our drinking water supplies for our future. Denise mentioned we have enough water. We just need to figure out where it's going to go and how we're going to protect it for the future. And I think that's what the state water plan really is all about. So,
Great, thank you. Our next question goes to Ms. Maureen Westbrook. From the utility perspective, water utility perspective, how will a state water plan impact water utilities and their ability to serve the public water supply needs?
Thanks, George. I think certainly that question is yet to be answered, and I think there was a lot of thought put into the statute as it was developed and put in a lot of language very intentionally that provided for balance in the process, and that it really does consider all those needs: public water supply, public health, economic development, recreation, and environmental benefits. So if we really do what the statute tells us to do, I think we'll all come out on the other side in a better place. As water utilities, we certainly recognize our responsibility to be good stewards of the water resources, to protect water supplies and promote conservation. We really have many shared objectives with folks here at the table, and Margaret and I have worked on a number of legislative proposals together, not the least of which is some work we did a few years ago on promoting rate structures and tools that will encourage water companies to promote conservation. And previously, there was an economic imperative that if you sold less water, you made less revenues, you couldn't invest in your systems. We've switched that around now and provided more rate-making tools that provide the opportunity for us to really be aggressive about promoting conservation so that we can still meet our needs, but at less expense on the water resources. At the end of the day, though, as a public water utility, our responsibility is to meet the public water supply needs of the customers and the communities that we serve, and provide them safe, adequate supplies for their current and future needs. Maintain access and affordability of those public water supplies. Fortunately, in Connecticut, we all get beat up when we go in for our rate cases. It's too expensive, but I'll tell you, the cost of water relative to all the other utilities and services you get, it's still a great value. And if people really thought about what they're getting for that, a penny a gallon to have water coming through your tap 24/7, it's a far cry from what you pay for a lot of other things. You pay in a 90-day period for what you typically pay for cable or any of your other utilities. So, it's much more, people are much more connected to it, much more emotional about it, I think. But the reality is water is a great value today. And so, getting people to realize the value of that water and, perhaps price it so it encourages conservation by our customers as well. Certainly, as you go through the process, we have talked, and Margaret's mentioned, the plan needs to be data-driven. I think it's easy to have assumptions or preconceived notions tell us that there's a problem in certain places or statewide. There probably are very real problems in some places, but you need to find solutions that meet the specific situations and not necessarily a one-size-fits-all. We need to solicit and truly consider the broad stakeholder input in this process. And I know Commissioner Betkowski talked about that early on. That's an important piece of this because it is going to impact residents across the state in some way or another, whether you're a business or a resident, an environmental advocate. This, if it's done as we envision it, it will have an impact much broader than the half a dozen of us sitting at the table here can imagine. So making sure those people are heard, and that if we go through a process and come to consensus, that they don't come in at the end of the game and say, wait, stop, because there's a lot of work already gone into this and a lot more will go into it before we get a plan out there for approval. So if we do that and we balance the interests and get it supported, I think we will all benefit from it. We need to maintain our ability, though, to serve those customers. So certainly registered diversions have been a controversial item from the get-go. That was done in the 80s to protect the ability to meet those water supply needs. Should some of that be revisited? There are registered diversions on the books that are now, it was a strawberry farm that has now got a condominium sitting on that same land served by public water supply. But that quantity is sitting out on their books as if it's being used today. So first, how do you get at those that are really not even being used? And then ask the honest questions about, are people, are supplies over registered or not? But I think to get to that conversation, we need to understand the real data and what's out there, what the needs are, where the needs are, and don't put people in a position of defending it as much as, a do no harm premise out the gate. When we've looked at other states that across the country, people have tackled this issue. And the ones that have been most successful start with a premise of do no harm, identify the problem, and then work together on solutions and create incentives for people to get to implement those solutions as opposed to a punitive approach. And I think we'll get there if we go about it that way. I think you will, if you do something too dramatic and people start getting defensive, all the good work will quickly diffuse. And so I think but working together, I think we can do it.
But I think planning should be iterative too. So, this is just the first, maybe of many state plans to come. And so I think you're right for us to be cautious and make sure they're out of the box. We don't take too big a bite, if you will, but make sure we move forward and put the pieces together.
Great, super. So the next portion of this event, not that one. We're going to take some audience questions for the panel. We have about 10 minutes for that. So if anyone has any questions or if you just have any comments that you'd like to express, please feel free to come up. I'm going to grab a mic here and open it up for any questions. Anyone want to ask a question? Raise a hand. Is there anyone? Yes.
Oh, great. mic if you can't hear me.
I would love to do that, but we're wired here.
Okay.
You have to go down.
You have to go
You have
to
to come down. Stand right here. State your name.
Paul Castor, I'm on the faculty. I just have one question. One of the panelists mentioned cybersecurity, which we're all worrying about. And when I look at the picture of the reservoir, I just wonder about simple, like, what would prevent someone from poisoning the water? A terrorist. And I don't see what the control, are there controls for that?
I would defer to Maureen Westberg from Connecticut Water Company to say how she's protecting our reservoirs.
I defer to George, it's his reservoir. No. Certainly post 9/11, we all had, really took a hard look at our sources and our facilities and how we monitor them. And we all were required to come up with sabotage response plans for EPA. But the reality is that you can put fences all over the place, and if someone's hell-bent on getting to your supplies, there is a risk there. So our responsibility is to do reasonable measures without, being so out of control in how we respond to it, but also the water quality monitoring, the systems we have in place for some real-time analysis on our control systems that tell us what's going on at our treatment plants with the supplies that are going through there and the quality that we're seeing. We can get indicators that there could be problems going on. And then it's what do you do when something does happen? We all have robust emergency response plans, whether it's for a hurricane or a cyber attack or for, a water quality problem. And so I think, it's an iterative process, but I think the reality is just like if you're walking out in one of those places in France this week, you can't protect yourself against everything, but you need to do reasonable precautions.
Yeah, and in addition to that, one of my hats at Aquarion, I'm the Director of Environmental Management. And, we have folks, we have actually a police force, a small police force, that actually goes out there and patrols the watershed and our public water supplies. Also, what we do is we try to keep people, away from the drinking water supplies, particularly the ones that are closest to our water treatment plants. Also, folks in the community play a big role as well, and we've received many calls in the past of people who see something, suspicious. Thankfully, most of them have been, innocent mistakes, but we patrol the land. We're very careful with that, and at the treatment plants, we have all kinds of monitoring and sampling that we do as well. So that's something that we pay a lot of attention to and a lot of time to.
It's funny. It's not the larger water companies I'm nervous about, but my district has a tiny little village water company and has a great board of directors. And Joe goes up there once a month and cuts. It's a little fence. We laugh, but it's really scary. How many small water systems do we have in the state?
Too many.
Too
many.
25.
Hundreds.
20, yeah, just astronomical amount. These little podunk towns. It is scary with ISIS and everything else that opens up. Really, what a way to get at us. Really, never mind bombs and other things. Is the through our water supplies, and so you raise a very provocative concern.
But I think what's interesting about what Maureen had said is that for about 25 years, our large public water systems have had to produce emergency plans and look at strategies and have done vulnerability assessments for EPA, have done sabotage plans for the health department and under the water supply planning laws. So our laws have served us well even prior to 9/11. But as John had mentioned, the smaller systems can be somewhat more vulnerable, but part of one of the missions of the health department is to work with our public water systems, all of them, on security. Some of the most basic things about keeping your wellhead secure, keeping your tanks secure, just some of the most basic things that they may not be thinking about. We've been able to offer some assistance directly. We work closely with people from Homeland Security. We work closely with people with the FBI. And people from EPA who have a lot of knowledge about cybersecurity and other security initiatives. So we try to pass that information down to our public water systems to help them out.
But will that be part of the final plan? And do you think security and has that been discussed yet?
As part of
the final water plan to be presented?
the state water plan?
Yeah.
I think it's ongoing. It's ongoing now, so I
Yeah,
think
the
it's.
security, has that come up yet?
No, but I think I was just going to say that we, as the regulatory authority, have been involved very much with security post 9/11, and I have to say our regulated water companies have been very responsive, have come in and given us updates, and just last week, Chairman House, Arthur House, who is the chairman of our Public Utility Regulatory Authority, authored a cybersecurity docket, is what we refer to them as at our authority, all about cybersecurity and what we ought to be looking at within the regulated water companies. And he has a significant background. He worked for the National Intelligence Agency prior to coming to our authority. So we don't take it lightly at our authority in terms of security issues. But Representative Hampton's correct, though. It's the smaller systems that you tend to worry about. And if you want to have chaos, just have, it doesn't have to be something, but a little bit of blue dye and water, and you'd have a lot of chaos around. That's for sure.
Great, thank you. Vice Chair Bukowski, you're on the agenda for the wrap-up. Would you
There was a
like-
question over
Oh, another question? Oh, sure, sure. We have time for one more question. Come on.
So as a land use professional, I'm very excited about the process for a state, because I do think that the state of Connecticut has always kind of been in the forefront on a lot of things pertaining to water management, especially with the wetlands laws and the way the state does protect its wetlands through local land use planning. And obviously wetlands are a fundamental priority in protection for the water resources for the state. That being said, with the plan that is going to be put together, one of the things that was tasked was a recommendation to look at land use measures. One of the things as a local permitting agency that we run into is that we are only looking at small parts of managing a watershed locally. Most watersheds are much larger, and they don't basically adhere to political boundaries that have been drawn over time. Does the plan that's being developed, do you envision that looking at land use planning in a more broad sense to tackle the issues that basically range beyond political boundaries? Because as much as one town wants to protect a watershed and do strong watershed management planning, the town a mile down the road may have a totally different interest economically, and not see as much of a need for protection. And that's just one thing in a state that's small geographically. We have a lot of subdivisions politically. I think that's, it makes it difficult to kind of do this broad planning. And do you see that something being addressed through a statewide plan like this?
I think it will be. I mean, one of the things we do have in the state of Connecticut is a comprehensive development plan for the state of Connecticut itself that we work through the regional planning agencies when it comes to implementation of that. But I see us working in coordination with that, and that we probably will have to come up with some type of modern ordinances. One of the things we've been, believe it or not, is to come up with a model drought ordinance. It was just we're still doing, and we've been trying to do a little drought ordinance. And we tried to do it, Len DeJean is here from Southbury, and we tried to get something going there. And there was some resistance to that because people don't want their water reduced. They want to take their showers, and they want to wash their car, and they want to water the lawn, and they want to fill the swimming pool. And when it comes to a drought ordinance, you won't believe what we had. Point well taken, and I'm sure it will be addressed, because if we're going to do everything we want to do in terms of looking at the quantity of water around the state of Connecticut and how it's being distributed, we're going to probably have to look at things on a regional level, which will be even more challenging.
And I think certainly it's something that's come up over the years. There have been initiatives to look at watershed protection areas. Right now, water company-owned land is very strictly regulated in terms of what can be done on it. Class 1 or Class 2 lands, those that directly impact the supply. But privately owned land, there isn't any similar thing. And it's been discussed a few times, but quite frankly, it's a huge thing to get past. You have a little bit of that stage set, however, with the aquifer protection regulations that are in effect, and those probably the early 80s. 90s, I'm looking at Denise, but, so, those were done, and that's, your area to protect a groundwater supply, and those do go sometimes beyond geographic boundaries. They're not nearly as vast as watershed areas, so it's a little less complicated, but the precedent has been set there, but how broad an acceptance there will be beyond that is to be seen, I'm sure.
Great, thank you. And so now, Vice Chair Bukowski for the panel wrap-up, and then we'll have the event wrap-up by Ms. Catherine Yarrington. Close it out.
Thank you, George, and I'm thankful for getting a couple minutes to kind of say where we're going moving forward with the water plan. And again, thank you to Fairfield University and Aquarian for sponsoring this. And I'm very excited that it's the theme. Water is the theme here. And I think that this, as I said earlier, will be the first of many public participation and stakeholder involvement we will hold throughout the state of Connecticut as we formulate the plan. Ask that people follow us as we do this. We do have a website that's being developed, and you can go to ct.gov/water and follow what we're doing. And I encourage, I see all the young people, students, hopefully you'll be looking towards a career in water. When we look at the impact of climate change and the importance of climate resiliency, what we're doing here is even so important in terms of how we can protect our water supply in the state of Connecticut. So I'm encouraged, motivated, and enthusiastic after being here tonight and seeing such a large crowd. My fellow panelists are just all wonderful people who all play a vital role in this. And to make this happen, starting with Representative Hampton with his passion in getting this passed into law a couple of years ago. So I very much appreciate everybody being here, and please follow us and invite us back. And again, congratulations to Fairfield University, because this is, I believe, the first university that has done something like this relative to water and making it a theme. And we very much appreciate you having us here this evening. And also kudos to our moderator.
I want to thank you all for attending this presentation, and I thank all our participants as well as those who work behind the scenes to make this program possible. Very, very interesting. Thank you so much.